Hi everyone, I'm Liz. I'm so grateful that you're watching this video. Today I'm gonna go over the book, The Happiest Toddler on the Block. The author is Harvey Karp, and he also wrote The Happiest Baby on the Block. So I'll talk a little bit about the actual book itself and how it was to read. I actually listened to it. I mostly listen to books. And also I'll talk about how it went for me when I applied it, what I still do, and what I don't do anymore. So I hope that you enjoy it. So Harvey goes about talking about all the different kinds of toddler behaviors that there can be. And I don't think he has children, biological children of his own. I didn't find anyone. I looked him up on Google, and he doesn't speak about his own children in the book. He is a pediatrician, and he talks a lot about the experiences, like anecdotal experiences from the parents that went to him and that asked him for advice. So he was really motivated to help the parents with their children. So I think that the book is really great with learning how to understand different behaviors and like from a scientific perspective, and also understanding how to approach them in more of like a healthy manner if a person wasn't raised with things that they don't agree with. So like he talks about clapping instead of slapping and things like that, and I think that could be helpful. So he goes over different levels of behavior, and I think he calls them green light, yellow light, and red light behaviors. And a little bit of it is, the longest part of the book is green light behaviors, because he really wants to focus on giving the toddlers the most attention when they are doing great, when they're doing good, and how to respond to them in a way that keeps them in that area. So I found that to be helpful and eye-opening to focus on those behaviors, and it's really cool to listen to it. He gives some very fun ideas that I didn't know how to implement until I listened to the book. And one of my favorite ones that I still use is playing the boob. So it's basically just acting silly. If you've ever watched the show Bluey, he actually tries to explain what the parents can do, and it's very similar to the show Bluey. He doesn't connect it, but I find that very similar to each other. That's why I bring it up. Then with yellow light behaviors, he also talks about those and what to do about them. And then red light behaviors, which are more like danger zone, blood, like how to avoid those things and how to respond to them. So some of the things that he spoke about were talking about timeouts and basically clap and growl whenever a child misbehaves. So he says something like, when your child is doing something that you don't like, you clap and growl, like that. And he said that could help to get the child to behave. For my kid, it didn't work, and honestly, I had a lot of self-regulation difficulties. So the anger, when I put it out there, it only turned into more anger, and it didn't create this kind of regulation state, and my child could sense it, so it didn't work for us. And one thing that I do still use about this book is, sorry that this is all over the place, I'm just sharing what I remember, and I hope it's helpful. I hope it makes sense. Please let me know about your feedback. But basically, one thing that I still use that was the biggest takeaway for me is the fast food rule. So he goes over this rule for like the longest time in the book, and it's basically a rule that we create for ourselves, where when a child says something, we respond to it. So if a child says cookie, then you say, want cookie? And you just like respond to them. So you can do that when a child is in a happy state, when a child is in a naggy state, and when a child is in like a very tantrumy state. So you can use that rule, and he explains the different expressions that you can use. Particularly if a child is not feeling well, it's best to try to mirror a little bit of their emotion without like falling into their difficulty, because they need kind of support from us. So we want to like show them, oh dude, I get you, you want cookie, oh sorry, we can't have it right now, something like that, just to like connect with them. So connecting with respect is an aspect of the book, and I still use that because I didn't grow up with that. I had no idea, and I found it so very helpful to learn this information. And my parents saw me use it, and they use it with him too, with my son too. They practice it, they saw me do it, and they saw that it worked. So they use the fast food rule. They don't really know that's what it's called, but it becomes second nature once you start practicing it. And another thing that I found really interesting about this book is he talks about children and their needs, like how to like fill their cup and keep them in a certain way that makes them feel like they're seen and they're heard and they're with the parent and not so much like on their own. I find that to be very interesting, and I think that's very helpful. But I also have learned through reading other children's books that for me it's best to involve my son into my lifestyle. So like not having to change everything around my life for my child, but like inviting my child into my life so that he can help me and feel like he's collaborating with me. But I don't think that was a part of this book, and I'm not sure if it's because he couldn't get that information because he only got it from anecdotal evidence, or if it's like a cultural thing. But I found that to be interesting and helpful to see that differentiation. And also, I'll tell you a little bit about my experience with trying the timeouts. So he recommends to do timeouts like 1 minute per age. So if a child is 1 year old, 1 minute of timeout, 2 years old, 2 minutes, and so on. So I did that with my son. I did it probably for about 3 weeks. And first of all, I felt very, very horrible inside. I personally did not enjoy my son crying and me being in the other room. He would scream very loudly and like hit the door, and he was just not okay. He was not okay, and he was very sad, and he just felt very hurt. So some psychologists have found that when children are left in timeouts, that it actually causes them to feel like they have to deal with their emotions, their difficult emotions, on their own. And if you look up anything nowadays, you can find anything for everything. So many people will say timeouts are okay, many people will say timeouts are not okay. So it's really up to figuring out what feels good for you in your gut. And sometimes it can take time for a person to develop their gut. Maybe some people have it already well developed and they know what it is that they want. But for me personally, I did it for the book for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I read other parenting books, and I ended up finding out that there were other solutions, and I found that the timeouts were not for me. I no longer use them for my son. I don't need to use them. He is doing okay without them, and I'm still able to discipline him by using other techniques. So I'll say personally, a personal anecdote from listening to this book was he goes over the book. He talks about like the fast food rule. Then he talks about also like brain development in children and the right hemisphere versus the left hemisphere, and how those are different and when are each or the other active. And then when he talks about like green light behaviors, yellow and red light, I felt at that time I was waiting for the red light. I'm like, when is he gonna talk about the red light behaviors? Like, I want to know now. My son is misbehaving now. I just want to go and like skip to that chapter. But honestly, I benefited so much from focusing on the green light and yellow light to like see how it evolved. And then I looking back at how I reacted, I was waiting for the red light behaviors because I really wanted a way to like show my son that I was the boss and that I need to be the one here who's in control. and I didn't know that there could be like healthy ways to do that. So when I got to the red light, it was like I implemented it maybe more than what he recommended it. And honestly, I'm not sure if like this is like a personal thing or what, but for me it was more of a trigger, that more than just actually implementing the thing. So that's something that I had to work on for myself. I worked on it with other self-help books and just coping with complex PTSD that I didn't know that I had. And now I find it to be a lot more helpful to get to know myself a lot better. So really and honestly, parenting is more about us than about the children. Are great tips and tools to learn how to interact with children just in general, like what do I do with this thing, with this caveman in front of me? And eventually we can learn how to respond to those things, and I think those are great tools that he suggested. Some of them I don't use anymore, I didn't find them very helpful, but some of them I still use and I find them to be very helpful in my everyday life. So I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for watching this. See you next time. Bye.